All right, good evening, everybody. Let's get this show on the road here. Hope everybody's having a great night. This is Dave, the Watchman, with Bacon.com. And as you can see, I am flying solo tonight. This is going to be a lesson in pain for all of us. Most of all me. Actually, no, most of all you. As you can see, I'm flying solo. My moderator, Jeff, is a little bit under the weather, and also I think he's got some family obligations tonight, so he is taking the week off, but it is such a huge week in gaming. I felt like I gotta chance it, you know? Icarus needs to fly too close to the sun every once in a while and get brought back down to Earth. So here we are, all by my lonesome. If you're joining us here in chat, welcome. If you're watching later on down the line on YouTube or Twitch or Smashcast or Mixer, welcome as well. For all of you who might be joining us in live, be sure to say howdy in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. This is an interactive weekly news show. It is the Game Tasty Show, talking about the tastiest stuff in video games, electronics, entertainment, whatever is weighing in on our hearts. Anyway, again, I'm Dave the Watchman, and the flagship website is nerdbacon.com. You can catch an audio version of this as well on Anchor, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Google's podcasting service, and wherever you get your fine audio material. This has been an insane week in the world of video games. Holy shnikes. I don't know if I've ever seen so many industry-changing bombshells thrown in the same week, like outside of an E3. And the funny thing is, I don't think a lot of people realize the significance of everything that's actually happening this week. But the ramifications are going to be felt for years and years to come. But first, let's talk a little bit of quick news before we get into the meat and potatoes, the tasty portions of this show. Just breaking today via Kotaku's Jason Schreier, EA is laying off a whopping 350 employees. According to Kotaku, the video game publisher Electronic Arts is laying off 350 people in marketing, publishing, and other areas. The latest move in what's been a brutal year for the gaming industry. In an email to employees obtained by Kotaku, EA boss Andrew Wilson said the goal would be to streamline decision-making in the marketing and publishing departments following a consolidation that began last year, improve customer support, and change some of its international strategies. A move that includes closing offices in Russia and Japan. We have a vision to be the world's greatest company, greatest games company, he wrote. If we're honest with ourselves, we're not there right now. Gee, Andrew, what gave you the first idea that you weren't the greatest games company in the world right now? Could it be the fact that you've mishandled Star Wars? Could it be the... Well, Anthem, I guess, hasn't had a crummy launch. I was going to say Anthem had a crummy launch, but lo and behold, I'll get off on a tangent. Son of a gun, that game made like $100 million in the last month. That's ridiculous. I was not expecting that. I was expecting Flop City with that one, but you know what? They pulled it through. I hope the players are happy. I hope BioWare sticks with it, and I'm glad because this means BioWare is going to stay open, at least for the foreseeable future. Where was I? Oh, yes. Across the company, teams are already taking action to ensure we are creating higher quality games and live services, reaching more platforms with our content and subscriptions, improving our Frostbite tools, focusing on network and cloud gaming priorities, and closing the gap between us and our player communities, he added. When reached by Kotaku this morning, EA sent over the following statement. Today, we took some important steps as a company to address our challenges and prepare for the opportunities ahead. As we look across a changing world around us, it's clear that we must change with it. This is a completely different guy in marketing. This is completely different from Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson is this accent, and then marketing is this accent. Anyway, we're making deliberate moves to better deliver on our commitments, yada, yada, yada. More corporate speaks. Later, an EA representative added that the company would be providing severance to laid-off employees, and this comes in the midst of a number of layoffs throughout the industry, most notably at Activision Blizzard and Arena.net. Hundreds of employees laid off at both of those institutions. Schreier concludes with, although the video game industry continues to grow, with the Entertainment Software Association touting ever-increasing revenue, it's been a challenging 2019 for developers and publishers. So that is very interesting. You know who predicted some market contraction within the video game industry? Not us. No, not us. It was actually Michael Pachter from Wedbush Securities. He was out there in his 2019 predictions saying that we're going to see a year of contraction. And this is part of it. I wonder if there's something else going on behind the scenes at EA. Yeah, it just seems kind of odd to be laying off all those marketing people and everything, but layoffs do happen. It sucks, and I guess they'll just have to persevere. But we'll get you reported. That's cool. Have a good night. Anyway, let's talk a little bit. WayForward announced Shantae 5 will be coming out to a number of different platforms here in the near future. And that is pretty cool. It's hard to believe the Shantae series has been going for like 20 years almost here. That is very hard to believe for me. But nevertheless, there we go. Let's see. Sorry, just always some technical difficulties. All right, anyway, beyond that, over the weekend, the Nintendo Switch fan base and everybody was holding their breath in anticipation of an announcement of a Switch port of Persona 5. And that's because Atlus had trademarked a number of different web domains that were surrounding Persona 5, and so there was a lot of speculation that the Switch was going to get a port of Persona 5, so everyone was holding their breath in anticipation, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. We wrote a story over at Bacon.com called "Take a Deep Breath, Persona 5 is probably coming to Switch, but there is a catch." Nintendo Switch fans collectively held their breath early Saturday morning, anticipating the possibility that a port of the highly regarded 2017 PlayStation 4 JRPG masterpiece, Persona 5, would be announced for the system. The logic behind this assumption was quite simple. Atlus was scheduled to reveal some news, so anyway, we've covered that already. Let's move on here. So Persona 5R is turning out to be Persona 5R The Royal. So it's an extension, like a brand new chapter for Persona 5 that's coming out for PlayStation 4 exclusively. No Switch version yet. So there was if the collective digital extension of the thoughts that make up internet discourse on the subject could somehow have been converted into something audible, my guess is that it would have resembled a great rising moan. Disappointment was the key word among the Nintendo Switch faithful, with some even turning their ire and scorn in the direction of Atlus for continuing to play with the heartstrings of Nintendo Switch fans, while others accused the company's marketing department of incompetence. Yes, the disappointment was palpable. However, friends, just hold your breath. It's going to be fine. There is no reason to lose hope or get angry about not getting the Persona 5/Nintendo Switch marriage announcement that so many are hoping for. Just relax. Persona 5 is still probably coming to Nintendo Switch. Atlus just can't talk about it yet. And the reason they can't talk about it is because Nintendo is announcing new hardware. And that's another rumor that we'll get into a little bit later. Actually, it's a report from the Wall Street Journal. But my article goes on. In my prognostication masterpiece of a 2019 predictions article, I reminded readers that multiple domain names surrounding Persona 5 had been registered in late 2018. While many were already focusing on a Persona 5R announcement for Switch, I was the first to tell you that the Switch version would, in fact, be Persona 5S, a title whose domain had already been registered. And I'm standing by this. I believe Persona 5S is the Nintendo Switch version of the game, but fans shouldn't start celebrating yet. That's because in that same article, I stated my belief that the game will require new, upgraded Nintendo Switch hardware to run, and that it may be unplayable on the base version of the Nintendo Switch. In August 2018, Nerd Bacon was among the first to report that Nintendo was working on an upgraded version of the Nintendo Switch hardware, and that there was a strong likelihood that there would be games developed exclusively for the new hardware that would not be playable on the originally released unit. So August of 2018, Nerd Bacon and internet sleuth Marcus Sellers, we both broke, and also some folks, Informer Freaks over in Spain, we got the story, and in conjunction, we broke that Nintendo would be launching a new Nintendo Switch. It was called, we were thinking Pro at the time, but an upgraded version of Nintendo Switch, and now we were called liars when it was announced. We were called, well, I'll get to this in a second. Let me back up. Anyway, August 2018, Nerd Bacon breaks the story that Nintendo was working on an upgraded version of the Nintendo Switch hardware, and that there were going to be games that come out for the new Nintendo Switch hardware that is not going to be playable on the original unit or this Switch Mini that is being talked about. The development of an upgraded version of the Nintendo Switch was later confirmed by the Wall Street Journal. In October, Nerd Bacon was the first to report that within Nintendo's halls, the machine was being referred to as the Nintendo Switch S. And while that name could change before the system hits retail, there is a very good chance that it will not. Our reasoning for this was the naming convention used by the then unrevealed port of Square Enix's Dragon Quest XI, which is known as Dragon Quest XI S. We said at the time, hidden among the list of explanations given as to the origin of the letter S in Nintendo's version of Dragon Quest XI, is the fact that the game is being developed for the new Nintendo Switch S. It's an interesting twist considering Dragon Quest XI was the first title officially announced for Nintendo's system back when the system was still known as NX. Our reasoning was further bolstered upon the discovery of the registration of multiple Persona-related domain names in late 2018, including the name Persona 5S. Bottom line here is that we got a tip. We've heard, we don't know if this is accurate, but we've heard that the new hardware is going to be Nintendo Switch S. We heard this back in October, as the report states. And that is why you're seeing Dragon Quest XI-S, and that's why you're seeing the domain registration for Persona 5S. So bottom line here is you're going to get Persona 5. They have the domain registered as Persona 5S, but it means you're going to have to buy new hardware to play it, because what we understand, and what the Wall Street Journal is reporting, is that there might be some games that are exclusive to this new Switch, just like there were for the upgraded 3DS that came out years and years ago. But anyway, that is enough of that. Bottom line is you're getting Persona 5, like it or not. It's just how much are you willing to pay to play it on a Nintendo system. Anyway, let's get on to the big news of the week. Just yesterday, Apple announced their official arrival, their big push into the gaming industry with the announcement of Apple Arcade. They had a huge event yesterday to announce a plethora of different initiatives. They relaunched Apple TV. They are doing Apple Pay, which is their own credit card, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, but it's Apple, and Apple has a lot of sway. Anyway, Apple Arcade is going to be a new subscription-based service. So it kind of works like Xbox Game Pass, where you pay a flat fee and you get access to a huge array of different games that you can play as much or as little as you want. All the updates and everything to those games, they just come to those games for free. You don't have to pay for anything. It's a curated list, so they're going to go out and try and get the best developers that they can on board with this thing. They've got a number of big names for Apple Arcade. It's kind of crazy. They've got Sega is on board. They showed some pictures of Sonic running around there, so that's pretty major. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy, he's got a new game that's coming out for this Apple Arcade. Platinum Games is listed as one of the partners here. We've also got Way Forward. So this is something that's going to go well beyond the typical kind of cheap shovelware that you see on like the App Store and stuff like that. In fact, they said that they're not going to have any type of freemium content where, you know, you download the game for free and then you got to pay for upgrades and stuff like that. That stuff's not going to be there. They'll still have it on the App Store, but it's not going to be part of Apple Arcade. So looks like they're trying to really push and deliver a true gaming experience. The cool thing about this, and this kind of bucks the trend in the industry, is that Apple Arcade will not require an online connection in order to access your content. You can download your games. You can play your games offline. It's not going to be streaming the content to you. It's just a good old-fashioned download like Ma used to make, you know? So it's kind of interesting that they're going in that direction, at least for now, as opposed to Google, who just last week officially announced their entry into the game industry with Google Stadia, or Microsoft, who's working on Project xCloud, or Sony, who's already got PlayStation Now, which is not great, but we'll get more to PlayStation Now. There's some improvements coming to that. Anyway, this Apple Arcade, they're going to have 100 games at launch, and it's cross-play across all iOS devices. So you can be playing a game on your iPhone on the bus. You pause the game, you get to your destination, you go home, you pick it back up on your computer or something like that, and the game just picks up where you left off on your phone because it's sharing all that data between your iOS devices. So that's kind of cool. It's an evolution on sort of what Nintendo pioneered with gaming on the go with Nintendo Switch, being able to put it in the dock and play on your TV and then take it wherever. So this one is just, instead of taking one device, this is using the Apple ecosystem, if you will, which is a pretty potent ingredient in Apple's arsenal here. Let's see here. I talked about game devices. It's across all iPhones, iPads, TVs, computers. It's very interesting that the internet seems to be doubting the significance of Apple's announcement. I saw, of course, a number of naysayers on the major forums out there. I saw a number of naysayers on Twitter who were kind of poo-pooing this announcement. Oh, it's just another iOS. Oh, it's just a bunch of stuff. Apple's already been in the gaming industry. No. You guys, you're not understanding. You're thinking, there's a lot of protectionism going on because you got a lot of fanboys who are trying to, circle their mental, emotional wagons around the system that they prefer to play on. But if you try and look at this objectively, I should say, if you look at this objectively, it is a significant announcement because Apple has so much sway. Apple, like I wrote about in my Google piece last week, Apple is I think it's the second richest company on the planet right now. So it's got nearly infinite number of resources as far as capital, as far as technology, as far as talent is concerned. So they can very easily buy their way in. Tim Cook, Apple CEO, raised an excellent point while he was giving his pitch for Apple Arcade, and that is that if you think about it, Apple iOS, if you take that as its own console, as its own platform, Apple iOS, the number of Apple iOS devices out there dwarfs all the PlayStations, all the Xboxes, and all the Switches combined probably multiple times over. And this is the thing about Apple Arcade. It's not relying on a new console. It's not relying on people going out and buying a new console. It's relying on what people already have. It's just a subscription. And think about how many people have iPhones. Think about how many people have iPads. In fact, let's look up. Let's just look up how many people have iPads. How many iPads have... How many I have? Okay, so since 2010, just a quick Google search, 2010, 350 million iPads are out in the wild. According to LifeWire, here's the question if you enter it in Google. This is a little on-the-fly research here. It shows you how underproduced I am. But I don't like that. I don't like highly produced productions. I like just being on the fly. Anyway, so according to LifeWire, Apple sells approximately 10 million iPads per quarter. In a phone call following the end of the fiscal fourth quarter in 2018, Tim Cook announced they would no longer report iPhone and iPad sales. So that's kind of crummy, but 10 million iPads per quarter. So 40 million per year is what they're selling, which right now that's Switch hasn't even sold 40 million units lifetime yet. Microsoft may have sold 40 million Xbox Ones between Xbox One, Xbox One S, and Xbox One X. They may have sold 40 million, and that would be 40 million within like 5 or 6 years. Yeah, 2013 is when they came out. So 40 million within 6 years. Sony has sold between 80 and I think 90 million. Let's go. I'm pretty sure it's 90 million. They've sold 90 million PlayStation 4s since that came out in 2013. It took them 6 years. Apple's selling half of Sony's lifetime install base just in iPads each year. And then you've got Apple Arcade coming out here. You've got Apple Arcade coming out, and it's available not just on iPads, it's available on iPhones, it's going to be available on iTV units, it's going to be available on, or I should say Apple TV units, it's going to be available on any type of Apple computer. Hell, who knows, it might be available on Apple Watch. But if it's an iOS device, you're going to have access to Apple Arcade. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And if you don't think that Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft are all crapping their pants right now over Apple's getting into the game market, then you are absolutely naive. I'm sorry to say this. You're absolutely naive. So all of you out there who are poo-pooing this, keep doing that all you want. Here's my big question concerning Apple Play. One of the big announcements that Apple announced in October of last year was a new version of the iPad, which is going to be, it's like ridiculously powerful. Like this iPad, and I forget the name of it. I want to say like iPad Pro or something like that. But anyway, this iPad is going to be like on par with the Xbox One S. So that kind of blows my mind. It's going to be hell expensive, but still, the fact that they're able to pack that much power into a device that thin is absolutely ridiculous. My question is, are the titles on Xbox Arcade, or I'm sorry, on Apple Arcade, are they going to be scalable? So, you know, if you have a title that takes full advantage of that fancy new iPad that's as powerful as an Xbox One or whatever, if you have a game that takes full advantage of that, is it still going to be playable when you take it to your less powerful iPhone and just scale down a little bit, or is it just going to be unplayable on that iPhone device? To me, that is the big question. If it is scalable, holy buckets, game over. Even if it's, scalable to a point where, if you have an ancient iPhone from like 4 years ago or something, it's ridiculous that we're calling 4-year-old technology ancient, but let's say you have something that's like 4 or 5 years old, maybe there are some games that aren't going to play on that. But even so, even if you cut out those devices, you still have an instant install base of like 100 million units just snapping your fingers. And that's really what this is all about. This is what we've been trying to tell you all since last year, when our excellent, amazing sources first clued us into what was happening. Here's a little secret. Nerd Bacon was the first outlet in the world to tell you that Google was getting into the gaming industry. We told you this in May 2018. May 2018, we told you Apple was getting into the gaming industry. In that same time frame, we told you that Amazon was getting into the gaming industry. Amazon hasn't officially announced, but the reports are out there. They're getting in. If you go back on Bacon.com and check out, just do a search for E3 2018, read some of our pre-E3 2018 articles, and read that post-mortem of E3 2018. We lay it all out. We laid out that E3 2018. Remember how weird of a vibe that show had? It's because people were tightening their butt cheeks. They were tightening the old butt cheeks because they were afraid of Apple getting in. They were afraid of Google. They were afraid of Amazon. They knew that the Titans, and I've seen that term out on NeoGAF. Let me tell you, we're the ones, our sources are the ones that coined that, and then we were the first to publicize it. But anyway, we were the first to tell you that the Titans were coming, and now they are here. The battle for the gaming industry, as we go forward throughout the rest of 2019 into 2020, next generation, it's not about the amount of units that are sold. It is about capturing players and getting them into a company's ecosystem. Because once you do that, it's really, really tough for that consumer to leave. You've got a lot invested in that ecosystem. Think about how many PlayStation Network free titles that you've gotten, Do you really want to drop PlayStation Network and lose out on all those free titles that you've been getting over the past 4 or 5 years? That's tough. That's why you keep paying $60 a year for online play, which is ridiculous. So really that's what it's all about. And Apple getting in, even if they don't have to have huge AAA experiences off the bat. They don't have to have the next God of War. They've already got 100 million, 200 million unit install base just with their iOS platform alone. And if you're doing it for $10 a month, you bet you're going to get, even if a third of 200 million, let's say just a third of them sign up for it, that's still 60 million people who have signed up for that service. And that dwarfs what Switch has sold, that dwarfs what Xbox has sold, and that approaches what Sony has sold with PlayStation 4. So if you don't think Apple is a threat, then you're kidding yourself at this point. And that's not me cheerleading for Apple, because I kind of think that they're a scummy company. But that's just me laying it out as a reporter who's been telling you this was coming in 2018, since 2018. That's me as a reporter just laying out the facts of what is happening. And I'll tell you where this is going. 2019, as I've been telling you, you're not going to recognize the gaming landscape by the end of this year. And you are seeing everything that I've told you about. If you go back and watch all of the previous episodes of this show, if you read our articles and everything we've told you about is coming to pass. This is the year that the lines are drawn in the sand for the Armageddon cataclysmic battle that takes place in 2020. It's the battle for the gaming future, and it's going to be a bloodbath. Like I said, there are still more shocking surprises that are coming this year. You're not going to believe it. And just as I've been saying, you're not going to recognize the gaming industry by the time this is all over. This is a fight. It's not a console war. This is a fight for a post-console future. That's what this is about, because consoles only have 7 to 10 years left, and then we're done. Everything's going to be services. Everything is going to be streaming. Everything is going to be service across multiple devices. So that is getting close to the end. What I have to say, our source, one friend of the show, one source, raised a great question. Since Apple Arcade is going to be on a number of different devices, including Apple computers, does that mean that there is going to be controller support? Because Apple didn't show off any controllers or anything like that. So that is a very interesting question. And if that is true, will it be something like Google Stadia, which allows you, to use the Google controller if you want, or use whatever USB controller you want? That's a good question. Actually, does Apple use regular USB ports? I don't know. I'm not in the Apple ecosystem, so I don't know. But anyway, Apple hasn't played all their cards yet. We don't know what games are going to be available day one. We don't know what the price is going to be of this thing. So there's a lot still yet to be learned about Apple Arcade, but it is serious, and it is aimed at I guess you wouldn't say that it's aimed at the hardcore people yet, but really, Apple doesn't need that hardcore. They don't need the hardcore gaming audience because, like I said, if you put it out for $10 a month, you get like a third of 200 million units that sign up for it, even a sixth of that, that's still 30 million that have signed up. That's still on par with what Nintendo Switch has sold so far in its lifetime. It's absolutely ridiculous. And all you need is just a few quality games that catch people's eye, and they're going to sign up for it, and then they're going to get tastes of other games, and then boom, you just have repeat subscribers, and then boom, you're suddenly got people who are less inclined to go out and buy that Switch, less inclined to get involved with the Sony ecosystem by buying a $400 to $500 console, less inclined to sign up for another subscription service like xCloud or Game Pass. It is a big threat. Oh, and the other thing I was going to mention as well about Apple is, I want to talk about fan loyalty and everything. Apple, my friends, has fan loyalty. We have all seen images on the news where people are just hanging out, waiting in line for the latest iPhone. Like every year, you've got people outside waiting in line for the latest iPhone. Yeah. Apple has crazy brand loyalty, almost on par, maybe even on par with Nintendo's brand loyalty. So I don't know. All I'm saying is that Apple is a threat. The next Titan is here, and now we just wait for Amazon's announcement, which will probably be a streaming service, and Apple will probably have a streaming service later on. And but they're going to just kind of slow roll this out with the Game Pass-esque Apple Arcade subscription service. But there's a lot more to learn about Apple, including how they're going to integrate the Apple ecosystem into Apple Arcade, and there are a couple of other secrets about Apple's plans that I cannot share at this moment, but they are quite interesting, and it is just game on, folks. Anyway, what else is in the news? Sony yesterday also was in the news. They held their first what's called State of Play. So this is let's be real. It's basically a ripoff of Nintendo Direct. Microsoft has been doing it with with their Xbox presentations like every couple of months. Inside Xbox. Thank you, brain. Inside Xbox is what they're doing. But Sony just rolled out State of Play. It's a completely pre-recorded presentation. It follows like the same speech cadence as the Nintendo Direct. It's like the same pacing. It's a ripoff of Nintendo Direct, really. Sony really didn't have any news to share in this thing. It wasn't very long. It felt like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. I was really surprised with the amount of virtual reality stuff that they showed. And it was pretty much all VR. They showed one last trailer for Days Gone, which is due out at the end of April. They showed, I think, one last trailer for Mortal Kombat 11, which is also due out in April. That's going to be multi-platform. But then the rest was VR stuff. They led off with an Iron Man game. Really, really odd. It's especially considering out of 90 million PlayStation 4s that have been sold, I think it's only like 4 million PSVRs that have been sold, which is, nothing to sneeze at, but still, that's not great. It's less than 10% of your install base that has a PlayStation VR. So they weren't exactly preaching to the choir. It felt more like a sales pitch to push the last bit of PSVR units out before they make the move to PlayStation 5. Speaking of which, when the hell are we going to get PlayStation 5 news? It feels like it is taking forever for this thing to happen. I don't know. Given Sony's lack of news, given this really weird State of Play thing, which they also said that this is the first in a series, so they're going to keep on doing it. Is it time to start getting worried about Sony at this point? Do they have anything? Are they scrambling behind the scenes? Is there turmoil that's going on? I think these are pretty valid questions to ask in regards to Sony, because they have been so weird ever since the end of E3 2018. Sony has been just really, really weird. Especially with the cancellation of PlayStation Experience last year and then announcing, hey, we're not going to do anything for E3 this year, and just their lack of communication throughout the year. It's getting weird, and I don't know if that is a sign of turmoil behind the scenes or if that is a sign of them just playing their cards close to the chest. I was wondering if... my speculation was that they didn't have a lot of games to talk about, but I thought, hey, with Apple coming out and talking about TV and stuff on Monday, maybe they're going to talk about PlayStation Vue and improvements that they're making to that. They didn't. I know that they are making improvements to PlayStation Vue. They've got a few different things that they're working on. Maybe they'll come out and talk about improvements to PlayStation Now, since the industry is moving in the direction of streaming. Seems like a great time for them to do that, but no, nothing about PlayStation Now. So, very odd. Speaking of which, I wanted to share with you, I found some very interesting things. I know at this point, I've got a pretty good idea that Sony is going to be revamping PlayStation Now, and I bet they're going to relaunch it because Google is coming strong. Microsoft is coming strong. Streaming is going to be a big deal. Not immediately, but it's going to be a big deal in 3 to 5 years, and then it's going to overtake everything in 7 to 10 years. It's all going to be digital and service-based. Streaming is going to be very important. But I am certain that they're working on stuff. I found a couple of patents that were filed very recently. This one was February 28th of 2019. Video compression system and method for reducing the effects of packet loss over a communication channel. So this is making sure that data that's being sent through the internet This is a patent to reduce the effect of any of that data being lost within those packets. The abstract says methods for hosting low latency streaming interactive audio/video include executing one or more video games or applications on a server communicatively coupled to a data network. Packet streams are received from a plurality of users and routed to the one or more video games. The packet streams include user control input, so this is your controller data, that are used to compute audio-video data in response. So they're saying the data that's being sent to the server is your controller data, and that's going to manipulate the audio-video data that the server sends back to the player. And they're trying to reduce any ill effect if some of that data is lost. So that's where you get your lag effects. The low latency, let's say the AV data are received from the video games or applications. Portions of the AV data are compressed in parallel using processing units, resulting in low latency streaming compressed audio video data. The low latency streaming compressed audio video data are routed to each of the users over a corresponding data network communication channel. The executing of video games, receiving of packet streams and AV data, compressing portions of the AV data, and routing the compressed AV data are performed with a latency such that at least one user has a perception that the controlled video game is responding instantly. Whoa. What has been the biggest complaint about PlayStation Now? It's been that it's laggy as hell. What is the big complaint about Google Stadia, or Project Stream as it was known in its beta? It's that it was pretty cool, but there were moments when it did feel a little bit laggy. February 28th, they've got this new patent where they're talking about reducing that effect of latency when servers is communicating with player, with the goal that the user has the perception that the controlled video game is responding instantly. That's very interesting. Now, follow that up about a month later. Just last week, March 21st, 2019, they filed another patent. Video compression system and method for compensating for bandwidth limitations of a communication channel. A system and method are described below for encoding interactive video used in video games streamed from a server to a client. For example, one embodiment of a computer-implemented method for performing video compression, not compensation, I'm sorry, let me read that again. For example, one embodiment of a computer-implemented method for performing video compression and detecting a maximum data rate of a communication channel between a server and a client. The method includes transmitting a video stream comprising of a series of compressed frames from the server to the client. The method includes detecting that the maximum data rate will be exceeded if a particular frame or frames of the sequence of frames are transmitted from the server to the client over the communication channel. The method includes reducing the frame rate of the video stream by adjusting compression of the video frames being sent from the server to the client to avoid exceeding the maximum data rate. So the other big complaint, if it's not latency and lag that people are complaining about with streaming, and the biggest hurdle that people have mentally to accept that streaming is the future or going to be the future, it is, the US cable, the ISPs have all these data caps and everything, which is true. Data caps are a big thing, but that's what this patent is talking about, my friends. It was originally filed November 20th, and it was refiled just last week on March 21st. They're talking about ways of reducing the frames of animation that is sent back over to the player, and because the server is able to detect whether or not that player is about to hit their data cap. So that's what they're working on. Zero latency, staying with your data cap. Folks, Sony is going to relaunch PlayStation Now. That is what they are working on. There's one more crazy patent that I saw from Sony. This one was filed February 28th as well from Sony Interactive Entertainment. You're going to love this one. The title says it all, baby. Holographic display screen. The abstract says, in one aspect, each pixel of a holographic display screen emits light in a narrow angle, and micro mirrors control the angle in which the light is emitted. The light that is emitted is modulated so that the image for the left eye is emitted when the pixel is pointed by means of its micro mirror at the viewer's left eye, and light for the image of the right eye is emitted when the pixel is pointed at the viewer's right eye. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what any of this crap, what any of that crap means, but what we do know is that this is a patent for a holographic display. So is that what PlayStation VR 2 is all about? Is it about VR? I don't know. Let me just put this on screen here. Let's do that. Let's just be cool and put it on screen. Sorry. 1 second here. 1 second. That's what I want. That is what I want. Here we go. Okay. Move this down here just for the time being. Oh, shoot. Well, butts. Never mind. I worked on that for... Well, let me just bring back up the patent here, but... Anyway, it's quite interesting that they're working on a holographic display. But it's more interesting to me that they're working on reducing the effect of lag and developing the ability, here we go, developing the ability to verify whether or not you're about to hit your data cap. And then in the claims here, it says, an apparatus comprising at least one display. This is back to the holographic screen. An apparatus comprising at least one display, plural pixel elements on the display for presenting demanded images, at least one pixel element comprising a first light emitter, and at least one micro mirror positioned and movable to direct light from the first emitter outwardly from the display at a first time, and to direct light outwardly from the display at a second time, and in a different direction than light is directed by the micro mirror at the first time. That is a lot of technical jargon, and I am not going to pretend to completely understand it. Basically, they have a way to display a holographic 3D image, and I don't know exactly how they're going to use it. I don't know if this is going to replace PlayStation VR. I don't know if it's going to be implemented. Let's see. Summary. Accordingly, present principles are directed to a holographic display which presents 3D images without the need for 3D eyewear on the part of the viewers. That's fascinating. In one aspect, an apparatus includes at least one display and plural pixel elements on the display for presenting demanded images. At least one pixel element includes a first light emitter and at least one micro mirror positioned and movable to direct. So it's got mirrors that are directing lights from an emitter to create the appearance of a holographic image. The instructions may be executable for controlling the micro mirror, at least in part based on eye tracking of at least one viewer. In some examples, the instructions can be executable for controlling the micro mirror, at least in part based on eye tracking and eye tracking of plural viewers. So they're tracking multiple viewers That is so freaky. Wow. Interesting. I'll have to go through this later and get a detailed report. But anyway, that is what some of what Sony is working on behind the scenes right now. And that could be why they're playing their cards so close to the chest at the moment. I'm going to go through and figure out what's going on with this holographic display thing, because that just sounds amazing. Anyway, that's what's up with Sony right now. PlayStation 5 is coming. They're working on all that. There's been all sorts of patents on this thing, and here's my thought on PlayStation 5. I think there's going to be a portable element to it. I think basically the controller is going to be... I don't think we're going to get a DualShock 5. I don't think it's going to be in any way, shape, or form like the DualShock 4, or really like what we've had. The DualShock hasn't changed since their PlayStation 1 days. It's been 20 years since this controller has changed. I think we're going to see that. This controller is going to have a screen built into it. This controller is going to... God dang, what if that is built into a controller? That holographic display. That would be crazy. But anyway, this controller is going to be portable in some way, and I have got a good feeling that PlayStation 5 will transmit games over to that controller, and you can take that controller wherever you want and play games on that controller, and then just come back home and play your PlayStation 5 games on your big TV. Sony has seen the success of the Nintendo Switch, and they were a little bit nervous back in 2017, early 2018, especially in Japan, because the Japan market loves portable, and Switch actually has almost matched, if not overtaken at this point, PS4's lifetime sales in Japan, which is crazy. So I think Sony has seen that and definitely wants to get in on the idea of really being able to take your experience wherever you go. That's what I'm looking for out of PlayStation 5. Let's move on. There was one last piece of news. This just broke yesterday as well. Everything broke yesterday. This was from the Wall Street Journal. Let me find it again here. I had to download this. Get out of here. All right. So Nintendo, this is from Takashi Mochizuki, great reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Nintendo to launch 2 new Nintendo Switch models. New gaming consoles will be released as early as this summer. Nintendo plans to launch 2 new versions of its Switch gaming console as early as this summer, people familiar with the matter said, as the company seeks to sustain sales momentum for the product going into a crucial 3rd year. One version will have enhanced features targeted at avid video gamers, although it won't be as powerful as Sony Corporation's PlayStation 4 Pro or Microsoft Corporation's Xbox One X, according to parts suppliers and software developers for Nintendo who have access to a prototype of the machine. So this is like what I told you in August, is that the Nintendo Switch Pro, as we knew it back then, and then we later found out in October it's called Nintendo Switch S. Whatever this device is going to be, it's going to be probably on par with a base PlayStation 4 unit. I laid out in August how NVIDIA has their new ray tracing graphics processing units that were coming out, and they're now out at the time, so that's going to drive the price down on existing technology. So Nintendo could pick up a custom version of something along the lines of a 1050 or a 1050 Ti or even up to a 1060. And even though we're way beyond that in terms of computing power, for PCs, that's still a hefty little bump up for Nintendo Switch gamers to have something like that. And, it's not going to be as powerful as the PlayStation 4 Pro or Xbox One X, but it's still going to be a nice bump up. And that is what they are confirming in the Wall Street Journal. The new models are likely to be unveiled at the E3 Video Game Expo in Los Angeles in June, and possibly released a few months later, one person familiar with Nintendo's plans said. The Switch, introduced in March 2017, has been central to Nintendo's recent business success. This is the historical thing. Industry watchers expect sales for the Switch to begin declining soon, which is remarkable. Remarkable. Going into the third year, this should be the year where sales are going way up. It's after the third year that it should be going down. So that, to me, that spells trouble to me. And the fact that Nintendo wasn't able to hit their 20 million forecast, they barely, I don't know if they sold more than they did in year one. If they didn't, that's a huge warning sign. Every console outsells their year one sales. Every console release does that. Switch would be one of the first, if not the first, to not exceed their year one sales. That is not good at all. Let's see here. He goes on. He actually hits on that. Industry watchers expect sales for the Switch to begin declining soon. Analysts polled by Visible Alpha, a provider of market forecasts, anticipate on average that 17.9 million units of the Switch will be sold in the fiscal year ending this month, followed by 17.4 million in the following year. So a decline of 500,000 is not good, friends. Oh, let's see here. He gives more historical data. Nintendo suppliers and game developers have been talking with their investors about the new Switch machines for several months. People who have used the devices say they aren't just similar-looking new versions with a higher or lower performance. This is where it gets interesting. He quotes somebody, you would be wrong to think the enhanced version is similar to what Sony did with PlayStation 4 Pro, and the other is just a cheap alternative that looks very similar to some past handheld machines. Say Sony PlayStation Vita, one person who has used the new device said. The Switch is a hybrid device that can be played either as a handheld unit or connected to a larger screen. Very, very, very interesting. Let's see. He goes on to say the company judged the new Switch models won't need the vibration feature because there wouldn't be many games released using the full benefit of it. So I think they're talking about the so-called Switch Mini, the handheld-only device that has been rumored for quite some time. So, again, we broke this way back in August of 2018 that Nintendo was going to start releasing, that Nintendo was going to release an enhanced version of the Nintendo Switch. And they were going to do it in 2019. And that Nintendo was kind of developing an attitude along the lines of Apple, where they release new iterations of their hardware every couple of years, and it's all within the same software development ecosystem. So, and then you would have situations where you would have a game that comes out for the Nintendo Switch, an enhanced version of the Nintendo Switch, and it's not playable on the base unit. And then going forward, it's like, Nintendo Switch version 3 comes out, and okay, so a game that is made for Nintendo Switch version 3, you've got that, and then you've got one that's made for Nintendo Switch 1, 2, and 3, and then you've got one that's made for Nintendo Switch 2 and 3. I do think that you're going to see that happening. It's pretty apparent that that new Switch models are coming by or at least they're going to be revealed by E3, and that is that's huge. Next generation battles are on. But anyway, that's about it here for all of us at Nerd Bacon. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, I'm Dave the Watchman. Our normal moderator is off tonight, so that's why you've had to look at my stupid face all evening and while I've been stumbling over my words for the past hour. But anyway, if you're watching us post-show on YouTube or Twitch or something, just hit the like button and give us a subscribe on YouTube so you can get alerted as to when we go live with game streams or the latest episode of the Game Tasty Show. If you're on Twitch, go ahead and hit follow. We're not even looking for your money. It's fine. We're not even looking for your money. Just hit follow because we want to Game Tasty with you. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Keep your eyes open. It's going to be a crazy rest of 2019. Hope you all have a good rest of your week. For all of us here at Nerd Bacon, I am Dave the Watchman. Now and forever, remember to game tasty. Good night.